My name is Josephine Douglas, and I always thought family meant safety, loyalty, and trust. That belief crumbled one Monday morning at exactly 7:59 a.m., a time now etched into my memory. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. Just a line. No greeting, no good morning, nothing soft or personal. She wrote, "We changed all the locks on the front door and the gate. You no longer have access. We no longer trust you." I stared at the screen longer than necessary. Not because I didn't understand what she meant, but because of the clinical tone, the cold efficiency of it, like an eviction notice from HR, like my family had outsourced my dismissal. I didn't feel shock or anger at first. I felt something colder, clarity. 4 years, I had been the one who fixed everything. Paid the bills, covered emergencies, handled the paperwork nobody else cared to check. I was the invisible force keeping the household afloat. And for all that, I had been nothing more than a background character in my own family. The locks weren't just about doors. They were the literal and metaphorical barrier they had been building between us for years. I typed back without hesitation. Message received. But I believe you forgot one thing. I didn't wait for a reply. I opened my banking app and double-checked the recurring mortgage payments I'd been sending for 4 years, over $1,500 a month, a house I had been paying for under the assumption that keeping the family afloat meant being responsible. I paused for a moment, fingers hovering over the screen, heart oddly calm. They thought taking away physical access meant control. But money talks, and I had the keys they didn't expect me to wield. A part of me wanted to scream at the unfairness, at the sheer audacity of it all. Another part was just tired of being used, tired of smiling while my contributions were invisible. I had always been the one who said yes, who filled the gaps, who kept the household running like clockwork. And yet, no one ever called me to say thank you. I remember the countless times I had handed out cash to my sister, Lindsay, because her car broke down or her credit card maxed out. I remembered covering the daycare fees she claimed were too high. And every time, I told myself it was fine. Because family meant helping. Because love meant sacrifice. And now, love had a price, and I wasn't the one benefiting. I went through my bank statements and calculated the total. 4 years, monthly payments, utilities, insurance, emergency repairs. The numbers climbed quickly. Over $200,000 I had contributed quietly, methodically. And for what? A cold text, a locked gate, a message that said I didn't belong. The realization hit slowly but surely. They had never needed me as a daughter. They needed me as a service, a provider, a silent contributor to the family machine. And now, the machine didn't need me anymore. 2 days later, a new message arrived, not from my mother, but from a law office. A formal subject line. Urgent, contact required. I didn't call. I didn't have to. By then, the first blow had already landed. The locks, the message, the public erasure. I didn't need a lawyer to tell me that my position in this family had shifted from daughter to outsider. Stories like this, I realized, don't begin with betrayal. They begin with obedience. With a daughter who keeps saying yes, keeps giving, keeps sacrificing, believing that one day her efforts will be recognized. I had been that daughter. 4 years, I had been the one everyone leaned on, the one who carried weight so no one else had to. I thought I was saving the house, saving the family, saving everyone's balance. But really, I was just being counted on. And the cracks, they appeared slowly. A Facebook post, a family photo, a casual caption. Lindsay standing in front of the house, smiling, the banner reading, "Home Sweet Home, gift from Lindsay." My mother's post, gushing pride, ignored me entirely. No mention of my name, no acknowledgement of my support. Just smiles and public adoration for the one who had never carried anything herself. I sat in my car, scrolling, not in disbelief, but in quiet assessment. That's when it hit me fully. The locks, the message, the entire household's cold precision. It wasn't accidental. I wasn't being excluded by mistake. I was being written out, piece by piece, of the life I had been sustaining. And in that moment, as I gripped the steering wheel, I realized something else. Locks can be changed. Access can be taken. But power, the kind you earn quietly, cannot be seized without recognition. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't even move immediately. I just sat there, a witness to my own liberation, knowing the next steps would define everything. I never realized how quiet betrayal could feel until it becomes routine. 4 years, I was the invisible engine behind our family, keeping the wheels turning without complaint. The house, the bills, the emergencies, they all fell to me. And I did it happily, or at least I thought I did. Because in my mind, this was love. Love was responsibility. Love was saying yes, again and again, until my voice and my needs were a whisper. Lindsay never asked for much, but somehow everything became hers to figure out at my expense. Her car broke down. I paid for repairs. Her credit card maxed. I covered the balance. Her rent, her groceries, her daycare, they all became extensions of my paycheck. And my parents, they nodded, smiled, and thanked me in words that never truly reflected the magnitude of what I did. It was always just, "You're so helpful, Josephine." Helpful. That was my title. Not daughter, not equal, just helpful. It wasn't just money. I fixed the plumbing when it burst, coordinated roof repairs after storms, called contractors for forgotten deadlines. I was the emergency contact, the problem solver, the one who kept things together. My calendar revolved around their needs. My evenings were spent negotiating, reconciling, or sending cash that I didn't have to send, all in service of a family that assumed my yes would always be there. I remember one winter night, the heater broke in Lindsay's apartment. She had 1,000 excuses, and the landlord was threatening eviction. I stayed up until 2 a.m., wire transferring money to cover her rent, calling maintenance myself to make sure the furnace was fixed, all while my own bills piled up. By the time I hung up the phone, my hands were shaking, not from cold, but from the realization that my life was a series of sacrifices invisible to everyone who mattered. I never said no. Not once. Because saying no felt wrong. Saying no felt like rejecting family, like breaking the unwritten rule that daughters exist to serve. And for years, I didn't notice how much of myself I had given away. Until the day I received that message about the locks. It hit me like a dam breaking. Every late-night transfer, every emergency repair, every quiet solution, they had counted on me to be invisible. They never needed a daughter. They needed a bank, a maintenance crew, a silent partner in perpetuity. And I had been both. Even after I realized it, I kept a part of myself trapped in hope. Maybe one day they would notice. Maybe one day my efforts would be acknowledged. Maybe one day the sacrifices wouldn't be invisible. But those moments never came. Instead, the cracks in their gratitude began appearing in tiny, almost comical ways. A birthday, a holiday, a family photo, the captions praised Lindsay. My mother would post about the daughter who keeps us all running smoothly, a euphemism, really, for the one who pays and fixes everything without recognition. The friends' comments were worse. "You're so lucky to have such a generous sister. Lindsay, you deserve this." Even my aunt, who had watched me quietly solve every problem, never wrote a word for me. And in those digital moments, I felt the invisible weight settle on my chest again. It wasn't just social media. It was practical, too. My name was on the mortgage. I was paying for the house I believed was for the family. Every month, I watched the numbers leave my account. $1,500 here, $320 there, insurance, utilities, emergency repairs. I kept meticulous records because I thought it mattered, to them, to me, to our future. But when they announced Lindsay as the homeowner on Facebook, it felt like a knife twisting in my spine. The house wasn't hers. It was mine that I had carried for years. I confronted myself in the car one evening, parked outside the grocery store after another wire transfer for Lindsay's emergency. I said aloud, "I am not a bank. I am not a housekeeper. I am not invisible." But saying it didn't change the years I had already given. Saying it didn't undo the late nights, the depleted accounts, or the quiet resentment I had buried under a smile. And yet, in the midst of all this, I realized something crucial my parents had trained me to obey. They had conditioned me to serve, to sacrifice, to hope that my contributions would eventually buy affection, recognition, or a place at the table. But they never planned to give any of that. They counted on me to exist as an unpaid, unacknowledged pillar. The first real sign of change came unexpectedly, like a crack in the ice. A casual Facebook post. A photograph of the house I had been financing, with Lindsay and her children smiling on the porch, a sign reading, "Home Sweet Home, gift from Lindsay." My mother's caption read, "So proud of our daughter for building a future we can all share." Not once did she mention me. Not a word of gratitude, not a tag, not even a hint that I existed as part of the story. I sat in my car, staring at the screen as if it were a mirror reflecting a version of myself I barely recognized. The truth was simple. I had been erased. And that erasure, which might have been accidental for anyone else, was deliberate. The locks, the messages, the public celebration, it was all orchestrated. They were rewriting history to exclude me. And for the first time, I felt clarity, not pain. Clarity that my role had never been that of a daughter or a sister, or even a member of the family. My role had been utility, silent and unquestioned. And now, the locks, literal and symbolic, had forced me to see it. The house, the bills, the late-night transfers, all of it had been my invisible labor. And now, without access, without trust, I understood. Obedience had brought me here. Compliance had cost me my place. But clarity was mine to take. A week passed after the locks. I told myself I would stay calm, assess, and act with precision, not emotion. But betrayal has a way of clawing under your skin, even when you think you're prepared. It started small, a notification from my banking app. A transfer I didn't authorize, $600. My chest tightened. I recognized the number immediately. It was Lindsay's emergency card, the same one I had bailed out 2 years ago when she temporarily lost her job. I texted her calmly, "Did you use my card again?" Her reply was fast, almost casual. "Don't make it a thing, Josephine. We needed groceries. The kids needed shoes. I thought we were still sharing that one." We weren't. That was my account, my money. And suddenly, the locks, the messages, the exclusion, they all made sense together. It wasn't just that I'd been erased emotionally. They were testing boundaries, assuming compliance. They wanted obedience. And when I didn't even have access to the house I had been paying for, they assumed I would continue to be silent. I spent the night combing through my financial records. Every transfer, every payment, every emergency I had covered, all of it meticulously documented. Mortgage payments, utilities, insurance, property taxes, daycare, car repairs, groceries. The total climbed like a cruel tally. $208,000. The exact sum didn't matter yet. What mattered was the realization I had been used quietly and systematically for over 4 years. The next crack appeared in public view. My cousin posted a photo on social media of Lindsay in front of the house I had financed. Friends commented with praises. "So lucky to have such a generous sister. Lindsay, you deserve this." Even my own aunt chimed in. "It's inspiring to see how much she does for everyone." Every word stung like a deliberate reminder of my invisibility. I didn't react immediately. I didn't call. I didn't confront. I just watched, quiet, as the narrative of my life was rewritten without me. And then I remember the old voicemails, casual audio snippets my mother and Lindsay had sent me over the years. My mother joking about the problem solver, Lindsay thanking me casually for paying her bills. I realized then that I didn't need to record anything secretly. They had left me a trail of evidence myself. 2 days later, I received a formal email from a law office, addressed to me as Miss Douglas. The subject line read, "Urgent. We have a problem. Call immediately." I didn't respond. By the time it arrived, I had already begun building my strategy. The house, the money, the public humiliation, they had underestimated me. They assumed that silence was compliance. They assumed that I wouldn't act. They were wrong. I started calculating, line by line, dollar by dollar. I totaled every mortgage payment I had made, every utility bill, every insurance premium, every emergency repair. I collected the group chat messages, screenshots of transfers, voicemails, and receipts. It all went into a single folder I labeled Legacy. Not because I wanted revenge, but because this was proof. Proof of years of exploitation, and proof that the house they celebrated wasn't theirs alone. By the following weekend, I decided to check the status of the property with my bank. My heart sank and then surged with anger when I found an incomplete application submitted by Lindsay, attempting to make herself the primary contact for the house. They hadn't finished the verification yet. The house legally remained under my name. But the audacity of the attempt, the casual assumption that I would allow it, fueled a resolve I hadn't known I possessed before. I took a long walk that evening, through the neighborhood I had maintained for years. Every repaired sidewalk, every mowed lawn, every bill paid, this was my work, my investment, my legacy. And yet, in the eyes of my family, I was expendable. Their trust had never been in me. It had been in my willingness to serve, quietly and endlessly. I realized then that the locks, the messages, the exclusion, they weren't just acts of mistrust. They were symbolic. They were a test of how far I would allow myself to be used. And the answer was about to change. Because obedience had brought me here, but clarity would take me forward. The day before I planned my confrontation, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open. I organized everything meticulously. The financial records, screenshots, voicemails, group chat jokes, they all painted the same picture. Josephine had been exploited, erased, and ignored. Every number, every message, every casual remark by my mother and sister reinforced the story I was about to tell, loudly and publicly. And then I drafted a final message to my grandfather, the only person in the family who had occasionally shown subtle awareness of my sacrifices. "I'm going to need you there tomorrow," I wrote. I didn't wait for a reply, because this wasn't about approval. This was about accountability. By the time I went to bed, I felt a strange mix of anticipation and calm. For the first time in years, I wasn't running, reacting, or hiding my anger. I wasn't waiting to be seen or validated. I had clarity, and tomorrow I would ensure that every person in that room knew it too. The morning of the party, I woke with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. I reviewed the legacy folder one last time. Every mortgage payment, every utility bill, every insurance premium, every emergency repair, every unauthorized card transaction, screenshots of the family chat, voicemails of casual dismissal. It was all there, neatly organized, irrefutable. Every dollar I had spent, every ounce of energy I had given, documented. I dressed carefully, simply, deliberately. Not to make a statement of wealth, not to impress, but to assert my presence. I wasn't entering as a victim. I wasn't begging for recognition. I was entering as a witness to years of invisible labor that had been erased. The venue was a rented banquet hall, softly lit with a banner that read, "A house is not a home without family." I almost laughed at the irony. Inside, my mother, Lindsay, and the extended family were milling about, smiles practiced, laughter forced. I walked in 10 minutes late, letting their attention find me. The room shifted, subtle movements, sideways glances. Lindsay froze. Her smile faltered. My mother's eyes widened slightly, caught off guard. I didn't greet anyone. I didn't hug or shake hands. I walked to an empty table near the front, set down my bag, and plugged in my laptop. The projector flickered to life. Everyone paused, sensing the shift in energy. Lindsay started the speech. She spoke of love, sacrifice, and family legacy, her voice warm and confident. Behind her, the slideshow displayed images of the house, smiling children, celebratory gatherings. Not one mention of me. Not a hint that I had kept that house afloat, financially and emotionally, for 4 years. I waited until her voice trailed off, until the applause had faded, and then I stood. Calm, steady, and deliberate. "I wasn't planning to speak tonight," I said, projecting my voice so every corner of the room could hear. "But since we're talking about legacy, let's talk numbers." I pressed play on the laptop. Voicemails of my mother's dismissive comments, Lindsay's casual requests for money, screenshots of unauthorized transactions, and group chat jokes about me being the family bank echoed through the hall. Faces went pale. Whispers turned into shocked gasps. Some of my cousins looked down at their plates, avoiding eye contact, while others leaned forward, riveted. I displayed every document I had compiled, the ledger of payments totaling $211,723.84, dated and annotated. I showed every screenshot of my sister attempting to claim the house as hers, every comment that had belittled my sacrifices. "If the house belongs to Lindsay now," I said evenly, "then this wasn't a gift. This was a transaction. And here is the bill." Lindsay's chair scraped back sharply. "Are you serious?" she yelled, voice shaking. "Dead serious," I replied. My mother rushed forward, face flushing, attempting to interject. "It was a gift, Josephine. It wasn't meant to." I stepped closer, unwavering. "Funny. I don't remember gifting $211,723.84. Do you?" A stunned silence fell. My father sat back in his chair, staring at me, unspoken tension hanging thickly in the air. I met his eyes directly. "And the unauthorized loan application you submitted using my name? I have that too." He froze, realizing the depth of the oversight and audacity. Then the doors at the back of the hall opened. My grandfather walked in, steady and deliberate. The room held its breath. He walked to the front, took the microphone from my mother, and said 3 words that echoed in the hall. "You raised a thief." My mother gasped. Lindsay's jaw went slack. Murmurs rippled through the guests. "And a coward," he added, looking at my father. Then he handed the microphone back to me. "The trust is yours now," he said quietly. "I changed it last week. Lindsay's name is gone." The room erupted in whispered panic. Lindsay clutched at the tablecloth, pale and trembling. My mother tried to protest, but the words stuck in her throat. I calmly addressed the room. "I didn't come here for applause. I didn't come here for revenge. I came here to reclaim what was mine and to make clear that obedience is not love and silence is not consent." I turned the projector back to the ledger one more time, scrolling through every meticulous detail of my labor, my finances, my sacrifices. Every eye in the room was on me. No one could argue. No one could dismiss the truth now. The room was quiet, heavy with realization and shame. I stepped back, closed the laptop, and looked around. I felt no triumph, no gloating, only clarity. I had reclaimed my life, my contributions, and my boundaries. The locks they changed had meant nothing. I had found a key they could never take away, my voice and my resolve. And with that I left. No hugs, no farewells, no explanation. Just done. The party continued behind me, but my story had already changed. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't a bank, a helper, or a silent observer. I was Josephine Douglas, and for the first time in years I felt free. The morning after the party was strangely quiet. No texts, no calls, just the sunlight spilling across my kitchen counter, warming the coffee I made for myself. For the first time in years, there were no demands, no emergencies, no subtle manipulations lurking behind polite smiles. The house felt lighter, but more importantly, I felt lighter. I had reclaimed my voice, my presence, and my boundaries. By noon, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. I answered cautiously. A calm, professional male voice introduced himself. "Miss Douglas? I'm calling on behalf of your parents. We'd like to discuss a quiet resolution regarding the events of yesterday." I leaned back against the counter, letting the words settle. Quiet resolution. The same word that had haunted me for years. Quiet. No acknowledgement, no apology, no recognition of their exploitation. Just a desire to sweep it all under the rug. Full repayment, I said evenly. Every dollar. Documented. Accounted for. No exceptions. There was a pause. Then the voice said carefully, "That's a substantial amount." "Exact. It's all documented," I replied. And I meant it. Every transfer, every utility bill, every emergency repair, it was all logged and labeled in my folder. I didn't need to argue, justify, or explain. The facts spoke for themselves. 3 days later, the wire transfer hit my account. $211,723.84 from a private account. Not my parents' names, not my sister's. Just the repayment. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post about it. I simply confirmed the numbers, then set the folder aside. Justice didn't need a fanfare. Closure didn't need a stage. I realized then that I didn't want peace in the sense of reconciliation. I didn't want apologies or attempts at emotional repair. I wanted accountability. And finally I had it. For the first time in years, I could reflect on the pattern of exploitation without anger clouding my vision. Every late-night payment, every emergency fix, every smile I gave while hiding frustration, it had all been part of a long game orchestrated by people who confused access and obedience for love. And now the game was over. I deleted myself from every group chat, every family thread, every social media post that tied me to the family network. I didn't respond to messages from my sister, and my parents' attempts at explanations were left unread. Silence was my declaration, not of anger, but of survival. And yet, the quiet brought an unexpected sense of clarity. For years, I had measured my worth through what I could give, what I could solve, what I could pay. Now, I measured my worth through what I would not give and what I would not allow. The locks they changed had meant nothing. The real barrier, I realized, had always been me deciding where my boundaries lie. I spent the following week organizing my finances, paying myself back for the time, energy, and resources I had poured into others. It was a symbolic act as much as a practical one, reclaiming my life, one number at a time. I created a separate account for my own savings, future security, and peace of mind. Every dollar I had earned and every sacrifice I had made became a foundation for my independence, rather than a silent contribution to someone else's comfort. Even more important than money was the mental clarity I achieved. No longer did I confuse obligation with love. No longer did I hope that compliance would earn acknowledgement. I realized that forgiveness requires accountability, and if people refuse to offer it, the only person who benefits from holding the ledger of truth is you. People began reaching out, strangers and acquaintances alike, after a short video I posted, not to boast, not for pity, but to share the lesson I had learned. Clarity is more valuable than approval, accountability more valuable than affection when it's been withheld. Therapists, friends, and even distant relatives messaged me with gratitude, telling me my story resonated with them. I realized I had been living a narrative many had experienced but rarely voiced. My mother sent another text later that week. "You humiliated us." My father followed with, "You didn't have to go that far." Lindsay said nothing. I read the messages, smiled quietly, and deleted them. Humiliation, distance, anger, none of it mattered. What mattered was that I had reclaimed what was mine, not just the financial repayment, but the dignity and the understanding that I had been exploited, not loved, and now I had clarity. Every morning since, I wake up with my own rhythm. Coffee in hand, the house to myself, quiet. No group chats, no last-minute emergencies, no pretending to be someone I wasn't. I laugh at things that bring me joy, not at the stress of others. I work because I want to, not because someone expects me to cover their bills or fix their problems. I rest because I've earned it. I live not in expectation of recognition, but in full acceptance of my own worth. The locks they changed were a catalyst, a sharp, undeniable act that forced me to see the truth. But the real transformation didn't come from them. It came from me, from choosing clarity over compliance, accountability over apology, and freedom over forced affection. I stopped mistaking access for love. I stopped mistaking compliance for worth. And for the first time, I realized that the only legacy that truly matters is the one you claim for yourself. Weeks passed since the party. Life felt strange, quiet, unshackled. For the first time in years, I woke up without a lingering sense of obligation to someone else's comfort, someone else's narrative, someone else's drama. I sipped my coffee, sunlight streaming through the kitchen window, and allowed myself a simple thought: I am free. The messages stopped eventually. My mother's attempts to reach out fizzled into silence. My father remained awkwardly distant. Lindsay never responded, and that was fine. I didn't need them anymore. Their opinions, their approval, their recognition, none of it mattered. Because the truth I had reclaimed was mine and mine alone. I thought about the locks, the catalyst that had finally forced the clarity I had been avoiding. The doors they had changed, the gates they had sealed, were meant to confine me. Instead, they had shown me the path forward. They had highlighted the truth that I had been invisible not by accident but by design, and that recognition, financial, emotional, or social, was a choice I could make for myself. I went through my days intentionally, savoring the autonomy I had carved out. I paid my own bills without worry, handled my own life without distraction, and laughed at things that brought me genuine joy. Freedom isn't always loud or dramatic. Often it's quiet, steady, and self-assured. And now my life was exactly that. I began to reflect on the years I had spent bending to the will of others, offering solutions, money, and energy while remaining unseen. It was a painful reflection, but it was necessary. I had learned that love given under obligation or exploitation isn't love, it's service. And while I had been generous, I had also been naive. The repayment from my parents, the public confrontation, the ledger of evidence, they were more than financial restitution. They were symbolic. They were proof that obedience and invisibility are not synonymous with respect or affection. I had finally balanced the scales, and in balancing them, I had also redefined my own worth. I stopped checking social media obsessively. I stopped hoping for texts, for apologies, for explanations. I realized that clarity doesn't require validation. It doesn't need acknowledgement. It simply exists. And in that clarity, I discovered peace. I still remember the day I walked through my neighborhood alone, past the house I had financed for years. No pride, no bitterness, just observation. The lawn was still green. The repairs I had overseen remained, but the weight was gone. I didn't feel ownership in the traditional sense, because ownership had never been the point. The point had been recognition, justice, and my own acknowledgement of self-worth. I had all of that now. Freedom, I realized, comes at a cost. Mine had been $211,723.84 and years of unseen labor. But the value of what I gained, the ability to define my own life, to set boundaries, to refuse exploitation, was beyond measure. I had learned the hard way that sometimes the people closest to us can hurt the most. But sometimes those same trials are the catalyst for the clearest understanding of self. I still have mornings with coffee, quiet, uninterrupted. I still laugh at trivial things, rest when I choose, work on projects I care about. No more phone calls about last-minute crises. No more group chats demanding money or favors. No more pretending that access equals affection. I finally understand that I am worthy of love and respect on my own terms, not because I pay, fix, or sacrifice. People ask if it hurts. It does, sometimes. But pain is different from confusion. Pain is finite, measurable. Confusion is endless. I don't feel confused anymore. I feel resolved. I feel empowered. I feel clear. And that is what the locks taught me. The doors they closed, the gates they barred, they didn't confine me. They liberated me. Because freedom doesn't come from others granting it. It comes from claiming it yourself. I no longer think about what my family sees or says. I no longer invest energy in those who refuse to recognize my worth. I invested in myself. My life is quiet, steady and mine. And I am finally at peace. The locks are still changed, the gates still sealed. And that is exactly how it should be. Because I didn't just leave the family behind. I left behind the version of myself that believed access was love, obedience was care, and compliance was worth everything. Now I live on my terms. I work, I rest, I laugh, I breathe. Not for anyone else. Not for recognition. Not for approval. Just for me. The past will always be a part of me, but it no longer defines me. The doors they locked were never barriers. They were invitations. Invitations to claim my clarity, to reclaim my worth, and to finally understand that freedom isn't given, it's taken. And I took it.